Today, we're going to dig into something pretty radical. It's a new blueprint for how we could organize ourselves called the Eirunomics CommonsTrust. Now, what's fascinating is that it's a totally modern idea, but it pulls its inspiration from something really ancient, the old customary laws of Ireland. And it asks us to rethink, well, pretty much everything, starting with the very idea of community itself. Okay, let's just dive right in with the idea at its core. This quote right here, it really captures the whole mission, taking all these scattered, broken pieces of our modern world and bringing them back together around a single fire. To even start doing that, this model says we need a whole new word.
So, to really get what the CommonsTrust is all about, you have to start with its philosophy. It argues that before you can even build a new kind of organization, you've got to challenge the word we all use to describe getting together: community.
On one hand, you've got our usual idea of a community. It's a bounded thing, defined by rules, by laws, by administration. But then, on the other hand, we get this new word, cosmunity. It's not a box. It's an unbounded coherence. It's something that isn't administered, but stewarded, nurtured, almost like a living thing.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Cosmunity isn't just a bunch of people living in the same place. No, think of it as a living field that includes the land itself, our ancestors, and even abstract principles like trust and care, as if they were active members of the group. The whole point is to bring back a sense of belonging that's way deeper and more connected than what we're used to.
So where does an idea this wild even come from? Well, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. Its main inspiration is a really old, customary legal system from Ireland called Brehon law.
Now, this wasn't some set of rules a king or a government handed down from on high. Brehon law actually grew up from the ground, organically, from the customs and the wisdom of the people over thousands of years. It was a law that was woven into the very fabric of society and nature.
And this is where you can really see how different its focus was from our laws today. The whole system was built around concepts like the Tuath, which was the people of a territory, the Fine, the extended family that shared everything, responsibilities, debts, you name it, and Enech, which was a person's honor. And get this, it had a real, actual, quantifiable legal value.
And hey, don't let that word ancient fool you into thinking this was some primitive system. Not at all. I mean, to give you a sense of just how detailed it was, how many distinct legal terms do you think are in the text that survived? Almost 5,000. It covered absolutely everything, even the legal rights of trees and bees. You see, this idea of honor, or Enech, wasn't just some vague social nicety. A person's honor price determined their actual legal standing in the community. As this quote puts it so beautifully, to harm someone's honor was like wounding the very fabric of society itself, that place where a person's soul and their community meet.
All right, so that's the ancient spirit, right? But how in the world do you translate those principles into our modern, complex, legal, and economic world? That is the exact challenge the CommonsTrust was designed to solve.
You can think of the CommonsTrust as a recipe. It basically takes two existing ingredients. First, the fair shares model, which is a way to get lots of different stakeholders to cooperate. And second, the perpetual purpose trust, which is a legal structure that locks in a mission forever. You mix them together, and you get this new kind of hybrid organization, one that literally owns itself, can never be sold, and is governed only by its stated purpose.
And yeah, the mission statement here is huge. It's incredibly ambitious. It's meant to be a practical tool for real systemic change. A way to take these destructive patterns in our society, like exploitation and inequality, and actually transform them into their regenerative opposites.
Okay, but how does this thing actually work differently on a day-to-day basis? Well, the model argues that if you really want to change a system, you have to start by changing the words you use to talk about it. So it literally rewrites the entire dictionary of business and value.
So let's start with maybe the most fundamental word in all of modern business, the shareholder. It's a word that defines ownership only in financial terms, right? Well, the CommonsTrust model has a very, very different take.
See, a shapeholder isn't someone who just owns a piece of the financial pie. No, it's anyone or anything that shapes and maintains the health and purpose of the organization. This could be the founders, the employees, the customers, the donors, and here's the really mind-bending part. Even nature itself can be recognized as a shapeholder.
All right, next up, what's the goal of a business? For hundreds of years, the word has been profit.
value that's pulled out for the owners. The CommonsTrust model just flips that completely on its head.
In this model, any financial gain is called a surplus. And the key thing is it's not extracted for somebody's private wealth. Instead, every penny is reinvested back into the organization to help it serve its mission. So the goal shifts from private gain to taking care of collective resources for a shared purpose.
And last but not least, what about the actual ideas, the innovations an organization creates? Our current system calls it intellectual property, which frames it as a thing to be owned, to be hoarded. This model has a much different name for it.
It's another one of these really profound shifts, you know? Infinite providence reframes ideas not as property to be owned, but as co-created gifts to be stewarded by everybody involved. And any value they create gets shared by the creators and plowed right back into the whole Commons Trust.
Okay, so we've looked at this new vision, its ancient history, this whole new language. What's the bottom line? Why does any of this matter?
Well, it really all boils down to a massive shift in how you see the world. And I think this quote just says it perfectly. This model is suggesting that true wealth isn't a pile of stuff you own, it's the strength of your relationships. And true power or sovereignty isn't about dominating others, it's about being in the right alignment with each other, with nature, and with a purpose you all share.
So this whole explainer really leaves you with a pretty challenging question, right? The Commons Trust is more than just some legal structure. It's an experiment in building a new reality. It poses this incredibly powerful question about how deeply our words are connected to the world we create. What could happen? What becomes possible if we just started with a different set of words?